The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of this station or Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other hosts or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented by KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Good morning, Webster Groves. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and we're not Mr. Rogers.
You aren't?
No, I'm Arnold Stricker.
Oh, gosh, and I'm Ellie Wharton.
This is In Tune, a 2-hour weekly broadcast which focuses and reflects on issues that impact and connect our community in the greater St. Louis area. Topics: arts, crime, education, employment, faith, finance, food, history, housing, humor, justice. Today, we're going to talk about benevolence.
Okay. You know, every time I hear you read that list, I think you ought to just say, we just cover everything that makes sense in this world.
That's right.
We don't cover any nonsense here.
No nonsense, and the smorgasbord.
That's right, the smorgasbord with no nonsense.
In Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
There you go. There you go. And you know what? One of my best friends, her mom, she was Mrs. Rogers.
Really?
And she was very instrumental in really forging ahead and taking issues of this community, the North Webster neighborhood community, to City Hall. And so a lot of the improvements that we experienced during that time, right after we became incorporated, because at first we were an incorporated area, or unincorporated,
right.
Then we became incorporated. And Mrs. Rogers was always up there at City Hall, making sure that our voices were heard.
She was about the neighborhood.
You better believe it. And she was one of those kind of women that when, I don't care whose child you were, if she told you to come here, honey, you better be packing your behind with something, because she was going to wear you out, okay? You had done something wrong.
Well, I remember, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, how when I was growing up, if you were walking down the street and you did something, the neighbors had carte blanche to take care of things.
Take care of things. And then, even worse,
when you got home,
they called your mother.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my gosh. And you really got it then. Then you had to wait for Dad to come home. Then you got it again.
I've heard that one. When your father gets home.
You know, by that time, all you could do is just go in your bed, in your room, because they said, and go to your room. Go to your room, go straight to sleep. That's how you save your life. Go straight to sleep. Every other day, your parents are struggling to get you to get into bed. But that day, you go to your room, you go to sleep.
You zonked out right away.
You are zonked out. I don't care if it's 3:30 in the afternoon.
And when Dad came in, you started snoring.
That's right. Big time. Big time.
Even if you didn't snore.
Yeah. And, usually Dad was much easier because he didn't know what the situation really was unless it was just something huge and totally embarrassing and outrageous. So generally by the time he got home, Mom had calmed down. I had pretended to be asleep. And Dad was just kind of like, hey, I've had a hard day at the office. I just want to sit down. I don't want to have to come here and start, wailing on some kids.
Yes, exactly. That's the last thing I want to do.
The last thing I want to do.
No, talking about neighborhoods and how neighborhoods make up communities. Communities make up areas that we live in, like Webster Groves. Streets actually make up neighborhoods, and I found that going when I was going around for Board of Education and visiting neighborhoods, that there are such a variety of different neighborhoods within our community. And then you take the greater communities together, like around us, like Kirkwood, Maplewood, Brentwood, Rock Hill. And then you take the larger greater St. Louis area. And where I'm going with this is when people get in trouble or they need assistance, it's great to be able to reach out to family, but many times now family, they're scattered all over the place. And it used to be families were concentrated together. And now you would seem like, okay, friends, but neighbors are right there. And there are block parties that connect neighborhoods together and neighbors together. But I wonder how close neighbors actually are in some of our communities.
I think what's happening is that we're seeing what is like a cordial neighborhood situation where you see your neighbor over the fence, you talk to them maybe on the Sunday because everybody's out cutting their lawn and trimming up and cleaning up. But do you really know those people? And that's the question, because when I was growing up, probably the same with you, you knew everybody. I knew everybody all up and down the block. Everybody knew me, which sometimes that was good. Sometimes that was not so good.
Right.
But at least there was that level of safety and security, and we could walk the streets with confidence that nobody was going to come and mess with us. And an example of that is a couple of years ago, one of my granddaughters was walking to school, and she was being followed by a man in a car. And she was up on Oakwood walking along that route to get to the high school. And a woman actually saw it and recognized what was going on. She turned around and she followed this, the man in the car who was following. And this man followed my granddaughter all the way up to the front of the high school.
Wow.
But do you know that woman never got the license plate of the car? And this became a big deal because it was reported immediately by the school district. They sent out the information. You remember that, right? They sent out the stuff. The Webster Kirkwood Times jumped on it immediately, put it up on their internet site.
Television stations.
Television stations. And I thought to myself, here was a woman who had the opportunity to have ended this man's terror, reign of terror, because that's what that is. And she didn't take down his license plate so that we could have followed up. And the school has cameras there, but because the car sped through, all they got was what kind of car it was, but couldn't get the license plate. So I'm sure that once this man saw that he was exposed, but he probably didn't come back through Webster again.
Right.
He probably went to Kirkwood or to Maplewood or, but she could have stopped him right there. And we go back to that. What is the responsibility of the neighbor? To really make sure and safeguard every child, not just your own or the ones that are around you in your neighborhood, but every child.
Well, and helping those individuals who are elderly, who need some assistance, maybe rolling their trash out or picking up a couple things around their yard, or just being in an assistance. And today we're talking about giving or charity or benevolence or providing for others. And those words are all, sometimes you can throw them together in a pot and they sound good together, but they have some little distinctions to them. And I know I've made this comment in the past that the metropolitan St. Louis area is a very giving or a very benevolent area. And I thought, well, man, you need to back that up, Arnold. You need to have some data to prove what your comment is, because I've heard that, and it's like, yeah, that sounds really good, but how does that really stack up?
But I think that is true because this area is heavily Catholic. And we do know that the Catholic Church is very generous, and they have their Lent season offerings, and they raise a lot of money. And I think that a lot of that does stem from the fact that this is a Catholic town. And I don't know how it stacks up to other Catholic towns, but I know that because Catholics are very giving, very charitable people in their own right, I think that may be, I'm just throwing that out. I don't know if that's really scientifically correct, but it sounded good, woo-hoo for the Catholics. But they've always been very, very giving people.
Well, and here's some things that we're going to talk about this hour. And in the second hour, we're actually going to have a gentleman discuss about a group that loans money with no interest.
Woohoo!
Well, you need to stay tuned for that one on Intune.
I'm going to tune in.
Yeah, you're going to tune in on Intune.
I am going to do that.
And by the way, if you have a comment or question, our text number is 314-736-4510, 736-4510. You're listening to Arnold Stricker and Ellie Wharton on Intune.
Well, Arnold, just before we get going, though.
Okay.
What do you think about that election?
Oh, my gosh. That was very, very interesting, wasn't it?
That was truly a nail-biter, cliffhanger, upsetter of the norms.
A cliffhanger, nail-biter, upsetter.
Upsetter, that's right. I tell you. But, it is so interesting because you could see that people are beginning, primaries generally don't get a lot of turnout.
Right.
And across the country where there were primaries, there was a tremendous amount of turnout and people very, very interested in the outcome. And women and minorities turned out in great numbers.
Well, this particular election with the prosecuting attorney's race,
yes,
with the county executive race, with those amendments or St. Louis County kind of whatever they called them, to the charter, the changes to the charter. I think those brought out several people, because over the course of time, with the events that have happened over the last 4 years, and in the history of those things and the publicity that those things have gotten, I think those were drawing people out. And it was very interesting to see the turnout.
Yes, it was. I know that I'm on a group of people that text. You know how you get on these groups. And sometimes I would get off the group, except I don't know how to take myself off the group. But the night of the election, when Wesley Bell defeated Bob McCullough, and everybody was writing in, and they were saying, "Praise God, who is faithful and just." I wrote in there, hashtag, "We did not forget." Because so often, that's what politicians think. They can do things that are against the community several years before an election, and they think, the public, they're going to forget what happened. They're not going to. And how crazy are they to think that the populace is so disjointed, so unaffected, that we'd forget?
Well, and I think they think that because there has been what I would call a track record of that. And finally, it's anything like in the American public. When they finally get sick of something or done with it, then they rise up.
Yes, exactly.
And the ballot box is the way they rise up.
That's right. Exactly. And that's why I've made up that hashtag, "We did not forget." Because that's what politicians need to understand, that you may have thought that in the past, as you said, it's a history of this, that we forget 6 months, a year down the road. But when we've got these situations that tore our communities apart, no, we can't forget.
And we're going to be reaching out. Reach out and touch someone.
Reach out and touch.
We're going to be contacting these individuals who have won the elections to come on the show. We're going to invite them on the show because we want to hear from them, and we want you to hear from them when we ask them questions, what their answers are going to be.
And that's the beauty of our radio station, by it being so community focused, that we're able to take those situations, those personalities, the issues that exist, and really dig deep and get the community involved. So community, you can expect that over the next couple of months, we are going to hit it, and we're going to hit it hard, so that when it comes time to go to the ballot box, you're going to be educated, well-informed, and energized to go out there and not only vote, but get your neighbor to vote, get your people on the next street, get your family. Like my granddaughter, last election was her first election. Guess what? We were making sure that she remembered she was going to vote again this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, if you have some questions that you think we should be asking candidates, whether they be local candidates, whether they be like for county executive, whether it be for the congressional race, whether it be for the Senate race, if you have questions you think we should be asking, you just text us at 314-736-4510, and we'll be happy to put that on our list of questions. So I went to a website which talks about the largest market of charities, the largest charity group. And this website is Charity Navigator. And what they told me when on this interactive chart was that St. Louis last year was number 2. This year was number 3 on overall score and ranking of being charitable. And so they took the largest market, which was 967 charities, and the smallest comprised 45. So what they did is they rated them on financial score, accountability and transparency, some metrics, program expenses, administrative expenses. By the way, Ellie, those are things I don't think people realize when they give money to a charity. And I know the United Fund has a big campaign in the fall, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And a lot of the charities are kind of umbrellaed under the United Fund, and what they do...
United Way.
United Way, right, United Way. And some of the things, though, that when you give to a charity, it's very interesting what percentage of the funding goes to administrative costs or fundraising costs.
Yeah, because I'm looking at that, too, and there is a difference between the local percentage and the national percentage, and it can be quite hefty. The difference can be quite hefty. Looking at that list here, like they're showing program expenses nationally are like at 81.4%, 82% here in St. Louis, but the administrative expenses in St. Louis, 8.6% versus 9.4%. That's big.
That's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
The less money you spend on administrative expenses, the more money it should be going to what the charity is actually about.
That's right. Exactly. And, one of the things I always remember from Fred Domke, I always mention him because, he was like my mentor as I was starting the station here. And Fred runs Bridge Bread. And he and his wife, they have worked diligently at this, and they work for no money. And everything that they do goes back into Bridge Bread. But I always remember what he said is that nonprofits should be working to work themselves out of a job. Meaning we don't want to be there and we don't want to become enablers. Let's just put it that way. We're always going to be there to hand you food. We're always going to be there to give you clothes. We're always going to be there to give you a house. And people can become very complacent. Not that they want to be this way, but hey, if I can go get food over here, why not?
And those are designed to be, quote unquote, temporary kinds of situations.
That eventually become permanent because people are holding on to jobs. We got to have the homeless because I need a job or else I'll be homeless. I got to keep running this food pantry instead of looking at how do we empower people, because that needs to be the direction. Yes, we're here to provide, but we're also here to provide that step up for you so that you're not always, and so that it doesn't become generational as well.
Right. Well, it becomes another program like the government has.
That's right. Exactly.
And there are valid and very, very good reasons, and even biblical reasons for those churches who provide some kind of benevolence fund,
yes,
or some kind of charitable kinds of giving or acts of kindness, kinds of things like that, whether it be medical expenses, paying medical expenses, providing funds, or providing food or clothing or places to stay. It all sounds good. I know St. Patrick's Center does a very, very good job of that. They work with the homeless quite a bit.
Yes, they do.
So, whatever the mission is the mission staying true to the outcome of what they want it to be? And are the funds getting somehow diverted to administrative costs or to other kinds of things which really don't contribute to finding and finalizing the mission?
And the mission must always be fluid because things change. Neighborhoods change, situations change. And again, if we are working to empower people, the basic mission has to change because you don't want people to always have to come in, the same people coming in, to always get food or to always get clothes or to always get those things, because what we can do is we can get people to a point where they lose their ability, they lose that emphasis in their life to say, let me go out and do these things for myself. And once we get into that mindset of I can't, and we know how dangerous that can be, we don't teach that to our children. How many of us have said to our little kids, you're just never going to amount to anything, so you might as well just quit now.
You give a child a good reason to give up.
Exactly. So why would we do that with adults? And many of those adults have children. So if those children always say, well, you know what, we can kick back and now, you know what, and spend our money the way we want to, and then we can go down here and get our food, our clothes, whatever, why should I go out there and make the effort myself?
Okay, now you kind of pressed a button for me.
Uh-oh.
You pressed a button on childhood hunger. Okay, I hear these commercials about childhood hunger.
Yes.
There are so many programs out there, and it's not about childhood hunger. It's about adult responsibility to make sure the children get the food that's available to them.
Ah, okay. And I do see that I pressed the button there. The hair on your scalp stood up.
What little there is.
What little there is. See, people, you had to have seen. I wish we had been on Facebook Live.
I may have grown some hair too.
Oh, now that
would have been really good.
That would have been really good. Maybe we'd have talked about this more.
I might leave the show today with a full head of hair.
What an afro. A silver one at that.
That would be great. That would be great.
Okay, back on a serious note.
All right, number 3, St. Louis. Charities in St. Louis. St. Louis actually leads the nation in saving. Large charities in St. Louis operate well within their budgets, reporting the highest median surplus, almost $342,000, and the second highest median working capital ratio in the study. So the thing about it is you can have a charitable group that gets money but overspends their budget, or says, oh, gee, we need more money because of X, Y, and Z. We weren't anticipating that. Apparently, according to this data, St. Louis leads the nation in staying within their means, which is really big.
That is important, because that hopefully what we're saying is that leads to that demonstrates good stewardship. I'd like to think that's what it means, versus maybe the money just isn't going where it should go. And it's interesting. We just received a CAP grant through the Rotary Club, and we're going to start working on a project delivering books to young children ages 0 to 4. That's our target group. And one of the things that's really interesting, when I got the instructions from the Rotary, it said, spend all the money. and 0% goes towards administrative fees. This is a flow through. Spend all the money.
Very important. We're not saving it for a rainy day.
That's right. And we're not using it for other things. We are going to make sure that there are however many books can be purchased for this amount of money to give to these many families. They're going to receive 100% of what we're doing.
Well, and I think about the Salvation Army, the Red Kettle thing at Christmas time, and how they really need funds to carry out the work that they do. The Red Cross also. There are a lot of groups. But when you look at the St. Louis metropolitan area, about 2.8 million, the average giving per itemizer, $5,250. The average percent of income that is given to charity is 3%. So the total in itemized contributions from the metropolitan St. Louis area is $1.8 billion.
That is amazing. Would you say that again?
The total in itemized contributions from the metropolitan St. Louis area of 2.8 million people is $1.8 billion.
And that is so interesting to hear that St. Louis is so on top of giving, considering so much of the racial issues that we have in this town. It almost, and it begs to differ, like, are people giving because, it becomes one of those shields? Well, I gave.
Right.
But, did you really reach out and touch? Did you personally, do you have groups that actually go out and work directly with people?
Yeah. Do you know where your money's actually going?
Oh, actually going. Or is it just one of those things, I gave in the offering plate, I've done my bit.
Right. Or I'm giving out of guilt, or, I gave money, so, that group, they always take care of it. Well, do you really know if they take care of it?
Exactly. So
here's another thing. America's most generous cities. This is a 2016. St. Louis was number 28, believe it or not, but 82% of the people donated any money to a charity or nonprofit, including churches and religious organizations. The highest city gave 92% of their population gave. In St. Louis, 82%. But that's still
that's huge.
Really pretty good.
But what's interesting on this chart is when you look at the distribution of where is the money going, you see that 45.6% of the distribution is going to human services, followed by 16.5%, which is to arts, culture, and humanities. Education is 10.1%. Health is 7.6%. International, 5.1%. And then we start to get into very small percentages when we look at community development, environment, animals, and the smallest percentage is given to religion. So human services, 45.6% is where our distribution goes to. So I thought that was very interesting.
That is very interesting. So when we come back from break, I want to talk a little bit more about, there's a volunteering and service rank. Like you would think that people will volunteer their time. That's giving. That's charitable giving.
Yes, it is.
It's a different kind of giving. And then charitable giving in the monetary form. And where does Missouri rank in the states related to that? Also want to talk a little bit about after the break, if you are a charitable group, what kind of rules do you have set up? Do you have some guidelines? Do you have some things that provide specific roles for people, specific things that you need to accomplish? There are some guidelines that we're going to go over that you can maybe ask your charitable group things that they can be doing.
This is great.
This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton of In Tune. You're listening to KWRHLP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri. Welcome back to In Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton. We've been talking about benevolence, charity, providing for others, giving, an act of kindness, a benevolence fund used to help families with unexpected or high medical expenses, victims of natural disasters, the unemployed, the underemployed, and others in similar situations.
And you know, Arnold, I remember when I was young, we used to have these kind of funds in the African American community, the Black community, the Negro community, the colored community.
You covered all the bases
I covered all
there.
those bases there. Okay, we used to have those types of funds that people could go to because, you know, during the times of segregation, we really couldn't go to the big groups and basically ask for funds. But we took care of ourselves as well. We were very self-sustaining. And even right here in this community, when people were in need, the neighbors came together and they helped. We had situations where, you know, a house would go up and that person, because those houses at the time were wood and not even good wood, you know, they just wood, and they would just go up like a tinderbox. But we as a community would rally together. We'd all go in our closets, pull out clothes for the kids, get food out of our pantries, and make sure that we could take care of those people. Because, you know, a community is only as strong as its weakest link.
Correct.
And if you've got people in your community that don't have enough of, then it puts the whole community at risk, you know, because, you know, a man who or a woman who is struggling to survive and to provide for their family will do whatever it takes. And sometimes if it means coming in your back window,
They do that.
they will do that. And if we can make sure that that is not the case just from a lifestyle, we can eliminate some of the other issues that we see that happen in our communities.
Well, and that's a good promo for our second hour, where we're going to have a gentleman on who's going to talk about a situation very similar to yours, what you just described, where his house literally burned down and how he received assistance on an interest-free loan to get himself back on his feet.
Interest-free?
Interest-free. So stay tuned to In Tune for the second hour after 12 o'clock today, because it's going to be very, very interesting. I know that many times churches do this. They have benevolence funds, and many times they are the ones, the faith-based groups are the ones that intervene. And in Matthew 25, if anyone has material possessions and sees his brother in need but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him? That's actually from 1 John. But Jesus emphasizes the needs for benevolence in his name.
That's right. Because even back then, you know, there was a fund that eventually came forward. The woman's name was Dorcas.
Correct.
And she was known for helping people within her village, in her neighborhood, in her hood. You know, she was that person. And so eventually the Dorcas societies were established.
That's
I think
correct.
we've even talked about that in some of our other shows where we've talked about that as community, you know, assistance programs. And again, that's the thing, it's assistance. You know, it's not like we're going to make sure that person is always going to be in need. Our goal is that we want to be able to lift them up during their time of need and then give them the means to go forward and to be productive citizens, and hope that there's that, you know, the 10 leper story. We hope that there'll be that one leper that turns back around and says, thank you, through either volunteering. When times are better, they come back and they say, well, you know what? You gave me a bag of groceries when I needed it. I went, now I'm able, let me give you back a bag of groceries.
Right, paying it forward.
Paying it forward, that's right.
And I mentioned before our previous break about volunteering and service. Those are also kinds of benevolence. You know, matter of fact, serving. You want to do some serving and benevolence in the community? It's next Saturday, the 18th, at Father Dixon Cemetery from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Go out to Father Dixon Cemetery on Sappington Road and help clean up and keep that cemetery going.
And we've had them on our air too.
We have.
And there was tremendous response to that interview.
We really encourage people to do that. You're looking for something to do with your teenagers. You're looking for something to do with the youth group, to do with your sports team that's going to have a direct impact in helping this community. Go out there and volunteer some time. Volunteering is just as much a giving charitable kind of thing as giving money. But people don't like to do that because it's their personal time. It's like, if I give my money, it's done. It's there.
It's done.
Okay?
If somebody else will do it.
Somebody else will do it. I don't have to worry about it. But when you donate your time, that's taking time out of what you really want to do to help someone else or help another group.
And that's the true sacrifice.
That is a true sacrifice.
Because, as we even talk about this in church, we also have the concept of tithe and offering. My concept is that you have not even begun to give until you have returned your tithe. Then you begin giving.
Well, I always consider there's three types of things. There's your time.
That's right.
There's your talents. And then there's your treasure.
That's it.
And we seem to be able to give the treasure. Some people seem to be able to give the treasure. Some are a little stingy with the treasure.
That's right.
Matter of fact, if your eye, Jesus talks about that. If your eye is
offending you, or is that the one you're going with?
It's stingy.
That's right.
You can't receive if your hand is closed.
Right, exactly. And there's no light. If there's no light coming into you because you are just so unaware or you feel so unaffected by the poverty that you see, by the need that you see, or even if you don't see it, by the fact that there is need, because the Bible did tell us the needy will be with us always.
Right.
And it's not that Christ is trying to hurt those people. It's his opportunity, our opportunity to show the love of Christ, because we do give out. We do give our time. We do give our talent. And children, it's never too early for children to begin learning to serve.
Oh, absolutely. They should put 10% in something for themselves. They
That's
should
right.
put 10% that they would want to give away to the church if they do go to a church. And then the rest is however you want to do that. But it teaches savings. I think about too a balance with this, because some people, I think, overgive. They too much time, too much maybe of their talents. I don't necessarily know about that, but it's like people who are constantly involved in a lot of different things. How effective can you be when you've really strung yourself out?
Out too far, yeah.
I want to go back to this particular statement, which is where does Missouri rank as a charitable state? Totally, their overall ranks 18th. In volunteering and service, they rank 27th, and in charitable giving, they rank 15th.
Okay.
So it's really pretty high. Mm-hmm. When you consider, obviously, the 50 states, I was like, okay, what's the 50th state? Can you guess what the 50th state would be?
Well, I remember I told you that little joke I used to have, or people used to have when we lived in Alabama. And Alabama was always 49 in everything. And we used to say, thank God for Mississippi.
Well, Alabama's 30th.
Okay.
Utah's number 1. Hawaii is number 50.
No.
Matter of fact, Hawaii is 49th in volunteering and service and 44th in charitable giving.
No.
Yes.
They've been spending too much time on the beach and surfing and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, they think surf's up. They think it means something else.
And, oftentimes, so when you think about Hawaii, do we really think of Hawaii having poor people living in there? That's that paradise place that we all think of. But I understand that there's quite a bit of need in Hawaii.
Yes.
And again, it could come from, just like when I visited Key West, and I love Key West. But I was surprised when I saw the amount of poverty in Key West, because what you have is a lot of people who maybe are of retirement age or even pre-retirement age that have kind of dropped out. They want to just have that sunshine and very liberal environment. And so they go to these kind of places in hopes of other people who have money, kind of giving to them. But you never think about those places having poor.
Well, it's interesting. I'm looking at Florida. Florida is ranked 44th.
Wow.
Arizona is ranked 46th.
And in those two states have a high number of retirees
right.
that have, and they've moved there in order to have that lifestyle that they enjoy, but they're not giving. That's very interesting.
It is.
Very interesting. But now, are they giving in the state that they live in normally? Are they taking into account the snowbirds who maybe just go there for the 3 or 4 months, but they live in Utah?
Could be.
So they're giving, in Utah, but they're not giving in Florida.
That's very possible. I note that Arizona is 50th, their last in charitable giving.
Wow. Now that's very shocking. Very shocking.
And so if you give money to an organization, or if you're an organization and you're thinking about being some kind of benevolent group, here are some do's. Adopt and adhere to a written policy. Make distributions from a general fund or a benevolence fund. Pay assistance directly to service providers like rent, mortgage. Don't give it to the person. Give it to, like, pay Ameren the bill. Pay Missouri American Water the bill. Allow contributions only to the fund, not to a specific individual or family. I thought that was very interesting. Develop adequate criteria to determine individual need. That's really important, Ellie, because sometimes, you might think somebody has a need, but it really isn't. There isn't criteria to determine that's a really specific need for that individual. Document the need, including external verification for larger amounts. Assign personnel or a committee to approve requests. I have trouble talking today with REs. Include reasonable limits of support per person during a specified time period. It's not like, we have an open checkbook here.
Right.
Or,
right.
We're going to be really stingy. We'll just give you $1
exactly.
here or there.
Right. And you still haven't dealt
Met
with the
their
issue.
need, yeah.
Haven't met their needs.
Determine the kinds of needs that will receive support, keeping in mind typically assistance is allowed for basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, and medical. So those are some do's. And I think what's as important are the don'ts. All right, so you ready for this, folks?
I'm ready.
These are benevolent program don'ts. Don't distribute funds to people without supporting documentation. Like, I know I don't give money to people. I'll buy them gas. I will buy them food, and I will even get them a room. If I see the need and I talk to them and things like that, I will never give money. That's just me.
Interesting. Okay.
Here's another program, benevolence program, don't disperse funds out of a bookstore cash register or out of unaccounted offerings.
Okay.
So count that offering up, make sure it's there. Just don't say, okay,
exactly.
Here's $25
Here was
out
the
of the
loose
offering
change.
plate. Yeah. Or, let's go to the cash register. Oh, yeah, I've got $100 here I can give you. It doesn't work that way. Don't disperse funds without a written record of the transaction.
Okay.
Don't allow members to donate to a specific family, individual, and receipt those donations as tax deductible. I'm going to give to I'm making this up right now, so I'm going to use the word Jones family. Not dissing any Joneses out there, but I'm going to give money to the Jones family, and I'm going to take that as a tax deduction. Well, it happens that my last name's Jones, too.
No. Then you sound like you might be part of a political group.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah, what?
What?
Another benevolence program, don't give one individual control over benevolence distributions without oversight or accountability measures in place. Wow, that's a huge one.
That is a huge one, and that is where a lot of charities get into trouble.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, that one person is kind of controlling things, and then if things begin to get out of whack, what happens is that then there becomes a cover-up. And it may not be that it's malicious. I mean, that's the one thing I think we need to state, that it's not always a malicious intent, but it becomes a situation that after a moment, then it becomes a deeper hole. Let's say it becomes a trench, okay?
Yeah.
It goes from maybe being a pothole, then it becomes a crater, then it becomes a trench, and then that person is struggling to keep it together. And that's where people begin to go to jail.
Recently,
Okay.
I saw someone who was in charge of keeping money for a police officer who was injured in the line of duty, and she had absconded with or embezzled, I think it was $75,000. And this happens in school organizations periodically. You'll read about it. It happens in those kinds of things where there's money that's being donated for sickness or illness, cancer mainly, or those kinds of things where a police officer is involved. And they're very valid charitable groups. They're very many times they're set up within an organization to take care of things. The problem is, who is managing those funds? Is there adequate documentation? Are there checks and balances? Nobody can write checks except without two signatures. And the important thing is when cash comes in, that the person that more than one person is handling cash. Okay, that it's being a double count, that you write it down, that you document things. And those people, even the person with the most integrity, there's a temptation there, and especially where I've read some individuals, they're doing this because they have their own problems at home related to either a gambling debt, or they can't pay their bills because their credit cards are maxed out or whatever. And so this is like a tempt. Well, they're not going to miss this $100. Then, like you said, that little pothole becomes a trench because now they've stolen $75,000.
That's right. That's right. And even here, I mean, we've had situations and we've had discussions about that because, we've got a little petty cash fund. And, our guys here are so honest about that. Like if they go and buy the coffee, and they come back and they know they've got receipts. They sit there and they wait. They don't just say, well, I would just go into petty cash fund and reimburse myself. They don't do that. They know that I'm the one that controls that. I go in, I reimburse them, I make the receipt. And that way, but I tell them all, but I trust you implicitly in here. And nobody has ever broken that trust.
Right. Nobody's taken advantage of it.
Nobody is taking advantage of it because, again, they realize the value of what we're doing here and the value that they have and that they bring to the organization. And I think that's the key thing, is that our people here understand that they bring a value to this organization. And without them, our organization would not be whole.
And, even within the best organization, there should always be a check and balance where somebody from the outside, you bring them in and you say, we want you to look at our books. We want you to look at our process of doing things. You're getting outside opinions. You're getting an audit, okay, about how we do things and about, do our books look right? And, it's when people start saying, because, just based upon my experience in the school business, there was a situation where a treasurer of a parent group took off with some money. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And, as I was like 10 grand or 15 grand, something like that.
Did they take off?
Yeah. Well, they were paying their bills because their bills, they were so swamped with their bills and they were in charge of the books.
Wow.
And so, it's easy to, take a little bit and I'll pay it back. You think in your mind, I'll pay it back, but you never get a chance to pay it back because you're still, that pothole that you described is now becoming a larger hole. And then finally they're in this trench and they've walked away with 10 or 15
Exactly.
grand. And now criminally, they're going to be in trouble.
And it hurts the organization.
It puts a black eye on the organization.
Yes.
So getting outside, volunteering to get this stuff done says, hey, we're being, I hate to use the word because it's overused, transparent. We're being open to having people come in and tell us, is this correct or is this not? We want you to know. We want to validate what we're doing in the eyes of the public and the people that we're representing.
And because in many cases, you're dealing with older people who may not be as up on some of the newer software programs that help to keep everything on track. You may have that situation where I've just been used to kind of writing it down, jotting it down. We jot it down.
On a piece of paper.
On a piece of paper, and then that piece of paper gets lost, or I just put it on a jump drive and I put it in my purse and take it home. No, that should not be the way that accounting goes, because would you do that with a corporation? An LLC.
Well, I'd say,
a C Corp.
Do you do that with your personal finances? And maybe some people do.
And maybe that's what I'm saying. Maybe some people do. So it is really important because you want to make sure that you, as a nonprofit, that you never do anything that taints the reputation of the organization, because then that impacts the benefits and the resources that you can give to the community.
Right. Really, really important that you always take precautionary measures. It's easier to take more and have precautionary measures in place or ask for more precautionary measures than it is to say, well, gee, nobody told me that, or, somebody could accuse you, and how are you going to defend yourself? Yeah,
you have to, I would say, go beyond when it comes to documenting, making sure, first of all, that when donations come in, if they're designated for a specific fund, that's where it goes to, because that's another area where you kind of have that gray, we needed it over here, and over here had more money, so we just took it from there and we put it over there. Well, the person who's donating didn't mean for it to go over there. They meant it to go over here. And again, that is really a violation of the trust that the giver has given, that you would put that money exactly where they wanted it to go. So there's so many ways. It doesn't mean that we've absconded with the money, but we've moved it, we've shifted it in order to make sure that the organization as a whole looks like it's viable.
So benevolence, giving, charity, providing for others, a very, very good thing. A desire to help someone or a feeling of goodwill towards others, being kind, helping people out in situations in which they need some assistance. Great things. But when you do that, check out the organizations that you give to. Ask questions. I think it's okay. I think if people get offended when you ask questions about their practices, then maybe that should be a red flag to you. Like if I'm giving money, I'm just making this up right now, to the St. Patrick's group, and I ask them, tell me about how much administrative costs you have. If they go, well, I don't know that I should tell you that. I don't know, frankly, that I should give my money to them, but I know that's not the case down at St. Patrick's Center. So those are good questions to ask, and you can also, many organizations have this information available on a website where they willingly give that information to you. You don't have to go prying to get it. And it's important to make sure that you know that when you're giving money, that it's going to be used towards the desire in which you want it to be used for.
That is really important, that people understand that they're giving, because oftentimes people do think about, what are the administrative costs? And if the administrative costs are excessive, face it, people tend not to want to give, because that administrative position is not for that person to live like a rock star. It's just not for that. And people who are in those positions, yes, they're professionals. They've gone to college, gotten higher degrees, things like that. They deserve to be well paid for the work that they're doing. But again, it is a voluntary situation in certain aspects, so you can't have the person, the CEO, making, $250,000, but everybody else in the office is a volunteer.
Yeah.
That looks a little fishy.
It looks a little strange.
Yeah. But also, then what is the percentage of giving? How are the funds being distributed? Again, you go back to the fundraising aspect of it. That person who is the bookkeeper, the treasurer, they are second in terms of importance to the CEO. Because without that transparency, and again, there's that word, but that is the way we have to look at it.
That's correct.
Without that transparency, eventually that organization is going to fall into the trench.
Well, it'd be interesting to know, too, how many giving units are there? How many individuals or groups give? Or is it like one big benefactor, and then you're the only other person that's giving? That would be interesting.
I do know an organization, and they are working to change this. They said they had one donor that gives like $500,000. And I mean, most organizations would go, whoo-hoo, a donor that gives $500,000, that's fabulous. Yeah, but what happens if that one donor falls off the wagon?
Right.
Or from a generational standpoint, it started off with grandpa, and now we're 3 generations down, and the grandchildren, great-grandchildren no longer see the importance of that, and they decide to shift it because now they have a different interest.
Maybe their interest is in another area.
Exactly. And so now they take that $500,000, boom, there you are. You are $500,000 with a big old hole. What do you do?
So for organizations or for people who are donating to organizations, interesting things to consider. And again, our next hour, we're going to be talking to an individual who benefited from getting a loan, and he didn't have to pay any interest back.
And that to me is amazing. A loan with no, no. I'll go back. I do that all the time to my children.
Well, this isn't a family deal. It kind of is a family deal, but it's not a family deal.
Okay, good. Okay, because I was going to say, I do that all the time. Matter of fact, my loans don't even get paid back.
Yeah.
Maybe I should count that as charity. Oh, that's right. If they have the same last name as me, it doesn't work, does it?
Hey, and don't forget that you can donate your time. And donate your time August the 18th at the Father Dixon Cemetery from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Call Ernest at the Father Dixon Cemetery to get more information and to schedule your time. That will help out.
That is wonderful. And that's such a good organization.
Great organization. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton of In Tune. You're listening to KWRH LP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri.
The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of this station or Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other hosts or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented by KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to In Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton. And off air, we were talking about a great example that happened with giving and benevolence and charity in our own community, Ellie.
We were, and the example was with Reynard and his sister, and how the community, because we knew Reynard and we understood his situation, the community rallied around him and his sister, got them housing, and really literally changed their life. And I was so proud to see that the community rallied behind this man, because it could have been very, like, oh, there just goes Renard, there just goes that guy on the bicycle. But imagine had he been in St. Louis, in the city of St. Louis, he would have just been one among however many people that are in need, and we see them as we drive and we come up on the freeway exits. I always try to keep a little extra, for people. I know you don't give the money, I do, but again, however we're giving is important. And again, right here in Webster, I think that the situation with Renard was a beautiful example of how a community pulled together and said, he's one of ours, they're one of ours, let's take care of the situation.
Knowing your neighbors, knowing your community members, and being able to take care of them. And, our guest today has a very similar situation that he's dealt with on a little larger scale and in a little bigger community than ours. And the situation was very similar to what you mentioned about a fire.
Oh my gosh, those are so devastating.
And how those kinds of incidents can really destroy lives. But he reached out to an organization that was very giving and very caring, and it was a loan that he was given, interest-free, and I know that blows your mind, Ellie.
It does, because that kind of goes back into the Jewish tradition of loaning.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does.
It does, very much so.
Matter of fact, George Krevsky. George, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, Arnold. Thanks so much for your call.
You're listening to In Tune, and you're here with Ellie Wharton on the phone with us. Ellie's a co-host on In Tune.
Hi there, George.
Hi, Ellie. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. We're anxious to hear your story.
And George, you're not right next door here. You're a couple next doors away.
I am on the West Coast. I operated the George Krevsky Gallery in San Francisco's Union Square starting in 1992 and closed the gallery in 2014, where I'm now dealing privately as an art dealer in what we call the Art Garage in the Oakland Hills.
Now, you've had the gallery there, but you aren't from California originally. Give us a little bit about your background, because I know you're from Pennsylvania originally.
Yes, I originally from Pennsylvania. I studied art at Penn State and creative writing at Elizabethtown College in Pennsylvania. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It was the 60s. It was a time to ask not what your country could do for you, what you could do for your country. I have always had a passion for compassion, and I decided I was going to be a social worker. However, I studied art at Penn State with Albert Chris Janner, who later went on to be the dean of the Pratt Institute, New York. And I really loved art, always, but it was a different time, and I spent the first 15 years of my career starting in Pennsylvania in Harrisburg, and then moving on to Fort Worth, Texas, where I organized the first exhibition of Israeli art at the Dan Danziger Jewish Community Center in Fort Worth. Then went on to New York to work at the 92nd Street Y, work on my graduate degree. I lived in the East Village at the time.
Wow.
And then from there to Nashville, Tennessee, where I met my ex-wife, a very good artist. She was and is an excellent artist. And then finally recruited to come out here to be the executive director of the Brotherhood Way Jewish Community Center in San Francisco. However, I closed the gallery, worked as a private dealer for a while, managed other galleries, and then, as I said, opened my own gallery in Union Square in 1992.
Now, your situation where you were able to get an interest-free loan, let me give you a little background, and George, you correct me if I'm wrong in some of the statements I'm going to make. But the biblical reference from Exodus, if you lend money to my people, even to the poor among you, do not act towards them as a creditor, you shall not charge them interest. And what's interesting, Ellie, about that it's not really an if, it's when. So it's not like that it's maybe possibly going to happen. It's going to happen. And the group that you were involved with, and I think that you're still on the board out there in San Francisco, is the Hebrew Free Loan Group, correct?
It was established in 1897 by 9 members of the Jewish community, initially to develop an ongoing plan to help immigrants to San Francisco build new lives. It was really guided by, as Ellie mentioned, the chapter in Mishpatim. I think in the Hebrew Bible, God tells Moses and the people of Israel they may not derive personal benefit from loans made to members of their community. By offering loans rather than charity, Hebrew Free Loans helps people become and remain self-sufficient. What happened in 1897 is these people, they started by pledging 25 cents a month to start a fund. My grandmother in Pennsylvania was a member of the Hebrew Free Loan Association there. She was a widow, a grocer who spoke little English, who raised 11 children, but they all, as a small child, I remember everybody talking about Hebrew Free Loan. And of course, when I came out here, there's now an association of 40 Hebrew Free Loans across the country. In fact, there is one in St. Louis. Dr. Stephen Cohn can be reached at the Jewish Federation of St. Louis. But I've become very active at the Hebrew Free Loan Association in San Francisco.
And Arnold, just to kind of jump in there, George, you mentioned something that made me think of something else, that even when it comes to agriculture, in the Jewish Bible, you'll see that it talks about how to reap from your planted, crops, and that you didn't reap all the way to the edge, that you left food unreaped on the edge of your crop so that the poor or the traveler who would be coming past would be able to freely go and get food. They're not stealing. They're not having to do things that's going to cause them problems, but it's you having the excess that you're providing for whomever.
That's exactly the case, Ellie. It's interesting, if you know the biblical story of Ruth and Naomi, where that was exactly what happened.
That's right.
Was that a corner of the field was left for the poor. It also, within the Jewish tradition, there is the tradition of the sabbatical year.
That's right.
But
seventh year.
The concept of free loans is quite different as it comes out of as I mentioned, the chapter of Mishpatim.
Now, how does your particular situation? Let's drive this home for our listeners. You benefited from this. What was the situation in which you were able to get provisions so that you could get your life back together?
Thank you, Arnold. You and I have spoken about it in person, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. One day, friends of mine, Doris dropped us off at the Cal football stadium. We were off to see a football game. It was a lovely day. It was warm. It was more than warm. It was very hot. And we went off, enjoyed the football game, came back, stood at on our patio and toasted each other and said, I don't know if you remember, in 1991, it wasn't the best business climate. We all said, life is very good if we have our health and our friends. And my sister called. We went up to Napa. It was she had a pool, and she asked us to come for dinner. And before we knew it, the Oakland fire had destroyed our home. As we came back, there were 6 inches of ash on the ground. 3,000 homes were destroyed.
Wow.
I remember turning to my wife and daughter and saying, this doesn't happen to us. This happens to other people. We read about this in the newspaper. We were shocked. We were in shock. And I had driven away. I had tried to fill up my car to make sure that I had gas in the car. And I put my wallet on the top of the car and drove away because I was distracted and lost my wallet, my credit cards, my driver license. So there I was, no house, no clothes, no money, no credit card, no driver's license.
No ID.
I was in shock, and I don't know why, but when I was working in the JCC in San Francisco, one of my colleagues was a man by the name of Julie Blackman, who was the executive director of the Hebrew Free Loan, long time locally here in the Bay Area, long-time executive director. And I don't know why or how, but I ended up in a phone booth. I felt like Clark Kent. And I called Julie. I don't know why. I had his phone number. Or I think I looked in do you remember the yellow pages?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my goodness. You actually looked in a book?
It was a phone booth with a phone book in it.
Wow.
Two things that don't exist today. Phone booths that have phone books in them.
And phone books don't exist hardly.
That's right.
Telling my age, Ellie, so...
That's all right. I'm up there with you.
Anyhow, I called the Hebrew Free Loan, and Julie answered the phone. He said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in a phone booth in Montclair. It's a neighborhood not far from us." And he said, "Don't move." And I walked out to a coffee shop, and a few hours later, one of his staff people, Beth, appeared with a $5,000 check. Now, this was before FEMA. This was before my insurance, before anything. And the only thing that Doris and I had at that point was the clothes on our back. And that $5,000 got us through a tremendously stressful time in our life.
So the time, George, from when you found out about the fire, from when you got back to where your home used to be, to the time you got that, how long was that roughly?
Maybe 2.5 years.
No, I mean by the time you got the $5,000 from the phone call. You found out the home had burned, and then all of a sudden he's presenting you a $5,000 check. How long was that?
36 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is. And George, I just want to tell you that we have a connection here that I lived in the Bay Area for 18 years in Oakland and worked over in San Francisco. So all the places that you're talking about, I'm very, very familiar with. And do you know that I had a house fire too?
Where were you in Oakland?
In Oakland, I was actually on 94th Avenue. I lived there right below MacArthur Boulevard. And
I know it well. My wife worked at Lanai Doors, a very small business that was in that area.
Okay. And the same thing happened basically to us. We went away. I came home. I remember this so well because it was payday. Okay. Came home, grabbed my kids. We're going to go to the mall, Eastmont Mall. We would go to the mall. And so we left. It was about 5:30. We left. It was still daylight. We came back just a little bit before 8 o'clock. It was getting dusk. Drove into the driveway and looked at something that I remembered was my house. And in that short period of time, the water heater had exploded, burnt my house down.
Oh, my.
Okay. And me and my kids come back to a shell of a house. But we all, we praise God that we weren't in it.
Yes.
That's right.
So I can relate to what you're saying here, George.
And you're talking about 3,000 homes that were in this fire in
exactly.
the Berkeley fire.
That was outrageous. That fire was just crazy.
So you got this $5,000. It helped you get reestablished. In what way?
Well, it helped us much more than even the Red Cross. It helped us with clothes, with food. We were staying with friends, and we couldn't stay with friends forever, so we were able to get into a motel. And as a matter of fact, and Ellie, you might remember, Elihu Harris was the mayor
exactly. Yes.
Of Oakland at the time, and he did a very righteous thing on his own part. I was dealing privately out of my home at the time before I opened the gallery, and Mayor Harris at that time allowed people that were living and working in their homes to have access to a city program that provided an office. So I then had an office for 90 days and used some of the Hebrew Free Loan money to begin to buy basically a computer, telephone line, just the basic startup. And remember, this was 1991. We didn't have the phone power of what we have today with smartphones.
Yes,
now,
exactly. Yeah, and Elihu Harris, just so the people who don't know him, and most wouldn't, I mean, he was an attorney. So, he a lot of times you would think that an attorney would kind of be a little tight-fisted and, but he was very, very open. And, I mean, I'm glad that you brought his name up because he was a great mayor.
Yes.
So,
and
George,
we have a great mayor now, I might add, Libby Schaff, who is the current mayor and doing wonderful things here in the city of San Francisco with immigration, with education. In Oakland.
In Oakland, right. And I've been I've been following her because she has come under attack a number of times for the immigration status that, stance that she's taking out there.
That's correct.
But tell her to keep on keeping on.
So, George, in your
hosted an event in our home that Hebrew Free Loan helped us get reestablished in. So just know that.
Good.
So you mentioned earlier that the initial beginnings of Hebrew Free Loan, there were some leaders in the Jewish community that donated money. And how does that happen today? How did that happen when you were able to use a loan, and how does it happen and it continues to happen today?
Well, now that we have, from those 9 members, now we have a board of 27 people. We have people that in the community, both corporations, individuals, people from their estates, people that have borrowed money. When I got on the board, I found an incredible statistic. We have a 99% payback to the loans that we've given. We have over 1,000 loans that are out now, and there is less than 1% default on the loan.
Now that's crazy. How many? What dollar amount of loans do you know? Do you know that number?
I think about. I know. the loans, there's $10 million in loans out. The average loan is $10,000. The range, student loans from $5,000 to small business and emergency loans of $50,000.
Okay, now you should be here in the studio because Ellie's mouth just dropped to the floor.
I'm still like, what?
$10 million in loans, and you have a 99% payback rate.
Correct. And remember, this started from 9 guys, each putting in 25 cents in 1897.
It just goes to show you when you're determined and you have the right motives and you pool your resources together and you take care of them, what can happen.
That is an incredible number. I mean, when you think about that many people and that kind of money that has helped that many people, where would those people have been if there had not been the Hebrew Free Loan?
It's interesting who the people are. Ellie Arnold, if you look at a cross-section, who are the people that borrow from us? We have first-generation students. They're the first ones that can afford to have an education. And when we say an education, that just doesn't mean a 4-year Ivy League college. That means undergraduate, it could be graduate school, it could be a technical school, it could be a 2-year junior college. It's across the board, and it's generally first-generation students. And we've just started a non-sectarian fund just this past year, and I'm proud to say that I'm on the board. And Judge Stuart Pollack was the leader in presenting this to the board, a past president of the association who felt strongly that we should begin to offer non-sectarian loans in education. We also, through Hebrew Free Loan, offer loans to couples pursuing fertility assistance. We also have a lot of loans involve people in the expensive adoption process for legal fees and going through the process. We help the recently unemployed manage expenses. Emergency loans, disaster relief. In 2017, we sent $27,500 just to the Houston Jewish community to help during the flood. We sent $28,500 to Sonoma and Napa last year during the terrible fires that were there, a total of $56,000 for disaster relief. That's just the tip of the iceberg of the kind of work that we're doing.
Now, I look at the types of loans on the report, and exactly what you're saying, George: adoption, business loans, debt consolidation, emergency kinds of things, which is what you took advantage of when that was offered, health care, first-time home buyer, personal loans, special need loans, student loans. What a huge kind of deal. And then to have 99.75% loan repayment rate.
That's incredible. I mean, imagine if you could get banks to get that. we could all get some money, couldn't we?
Our banker at City National here in the Bay Area, and Ellie, his mouth dropped also.
Well, you should have seen when Arnold gave me that information. I mean, truly, thank goodness we weren't on Facebook Live, because everybody would have been laughing because my mouth went wide open. My eyes were like, boing.
She was like, you got to be kidding me.
You got to be kidding me.
Right, now remember, the secret sauce, as our mayor chef is always saying, the secret sauce is that each loan is required to have 2 co-signers.
Okay, now we're gonna come back to that point, George, because we're going to get ready to take a break here. So we want to talk about benefactors, how those loans are kind of what quote unquote guaranteed or assisted, and Ellie, we'll discuss that after the break.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I am still just so much in awe of what George is doing in the statistics. And I know it's not just George, but that's all we have on the phone right now.
George, hang on. We'll be
George.
right back to you. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton of In Tune. You're listening to KWRH-LP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri. Welcome back to In Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton. We were talking to George Krevsky, who's located out in Berkeley, California, and we've been talking about Hebrew Free Loans, which is a group that provides some interest-free loans at no cost to help individuals overcome challenges and realize their dreams. They also provide these things when you're facing a serious financial challenge or trying to get things back together in your life. We talked about adoption, business, debt consolidation, personal kinds of things, special needs, even student loans, and they have a 99.75% loan repayment rate. And before the break, we were talking about what people who were taking out a loan had to do. And George, why don't you pick that back up there?
Well, the intake process, what usually happens is they have an interview with, we have a staff of 8, and they have an interview with one of our staff people, and they present their financial application. There's an application form that's filled out, and then a personal interview with the staff person, and then they need to go back and find 2 co-signers. Now, initially, since it was a Hebrew Free Loan organization, it was an organization set up within the organized Jewish community. The signatories were required to be Jewish. However, just this year, for the student loans, we do have non-sectarian student loans where one of the co-signers needs to be Jewish and the other need not. The other loans do require 2 Jewish co-signers. Now, those co-signers indicate that should, for whatever reason, the applicant default on the loan, the co-signer agrees to stand behind the loan and repay it. Hence, the 99.7 Arnold repayment. It's interesting how, and it's based on a sense of community. Generally, the co-signers are family members, good close friends, so there is a real personal involvement,
personal investment there,
in investment in the actual loan. Then, after that application, it then goes to a committee of the board that with the staff. Where the staff prepares a presentation, and since I had paid back my loan and got involved in my own business, I became a member of the board of Hebrew Free Loan here locally in the Bay Area, and then a committee meets to approve those loans. And it's generally done in sometimes with a conference call, and there are a group of people that might be meeting with the staff in the offices, and each loan application is reviewed and approved or sent back for recommendations or more information. But by the time it gets to the committee, it's been pretty well vetted by the staff. But the board, which does make policy at Hebrew Free Loan, does have an active role in approving the loan.
So do you have like business people approving on the board business loans?
Yes,
You have educators
there are
approving
people
student loans?
involved in the legal community, accounting, a banker or two, some entrepreneurs, some people that have borrowed money themselves and repaid it. People that have, we have some physicians on the board that way back borrowed money to help during their residency and their internship and are now actively practicing medicine, and they're involved as board people.
Now, is there a specific time that you require a loan to be repaid, or you're looking to have it repaid? Are there kind of terms like that, if you went out and got a loan at a bank, the same kind of terms would apply without the interest?
There is a formula, and it's set up, and I think each loan, although there is a policy of a time frame of when the loan should be paid back, in case of extenuating circumstances, they can approach the staff for an extension, and in rare cases that has happened. I know of one particular young man who's very active now in real estate, borrowed money to get started, and went through a rocky time, but is now very actively involved, has repaid his loan, and wants to get more involved in it. There's an organization we have called Full Circle, which is where borrowers then come full circle and can get more actively involved and eventually onto the board.
Yeah, I was reading that the Full Circle Club's a group of former loan recipients who support Hebrew Free Loan and spread the word about its services, and they're members when they become donors. Speaking of donors, and I was looking at you have $10 million in total funds in circulation, and the percentage of the dollars that come from like grants and investment and events and the annual campaign is 30%. So the large amount of where your money comes from bequests. Would you talk a little bit about that and how people do that?
It's interesting. The bequests, and sometimes they come from out of the blue. People that were not involved in Hebrew Free Loan, that all of a sudden our executive director, Cindy Rogaway, will get a call from an attorney that said, by the way, Mrs. B has passed away, and there is a bequest to Hebrew Free Loan for $50,000. Well, we didn't know Mrs. B. We had no involvement. And then when you talk to the grandson of Mrs. B., she'll say, Hebrew Free Loan in 1932 during the Depression helped Mr. B get started in his haberdashery business. And we never knew about it. It comes from out of the blue. On the other hand, we do actively have attorneys on the board that do counsel families, and that is an important part. There's a legacy program where we actively do recruit people to mention Hebrew Free Loan in their estate.
George, I appreciate it when you mention the word community, because we're a community radio station. The first hour we talked about benevolent giving and how the community can really, your neighbors and knowing your neighbors, neighborhoods, communities work together. And I'm reading from one of the impact reports here where it says, by offering loans rather than charity, Hebrew Free Loan helps people to become and remain self-sufficient while maintaining their dignity. And we were talking about how sometimes charities can become almost an issue where within themselves, where they're keeping people in a certain place, or they're continuing. Ellie has a statement that any charitable organization or tax-free exempt group should try to put itself out of business because if they're fulfilling their mission. And I really appreciate the thought process here about helping people to become and remain self-sufficient while maintaining dignity, because in that process it's kind of humiliating to ask for help.
That's exactly when I said to you, Arnold, that Doris and I looked at the devastation of the Oakland fire. I didn't know how to ask for help or to ask for help, or we were in shock, and then we were embarrassed. Where do we go? And for me, who my grandfather was an Orthodox rabbi, and I knew the sense of community, and the place that I needed to go was to my community. As a kid, I grew up at the Jewish Community Center in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. There is one, a very good one, it used to be on Schutz Road in St. Louis.
Yes.
And I'll never forget going into the gymnasium, and you walked through the lobby before you went to the locker room, and there's a big sign in Hebrew, and the translation was, "Separate yourself not from the community." And I think your program, Arnold, your radio station and what you do, the sense of community, of knowing who your neighbor is and what your neighbor's needs are, and to reach out. When I talk about a passion for compassion, that's what we need. And when we look in the 21st century and look around and see what is happening, indeed, my mother would always say to me, go back and Cain and Abel, we are our brother's keeper.
Correct.
Now, I had many friends that would say, well, I know my brother sometimes. I don't know whether I want to reach out to him. We are our brother's keepers. And our sisters, Ellie. I guess
that's right.
In the 21st century, I better add that.
Yeah, that's right. And I want you to know, when I was growing up here in this area, man, I would go over to U City to the Jewish Community Center on Friday nights. I could say one thing: those Jewish kids knew how to have a good old time, because we would get over there. We would have Jewish folk dancing. I mean, in the black community, what I would say is I danced so hard I sweat my hair back. Okay. We always had a great time.
We're listening to George Krevsky talk about the opportunity that was given to him from the Hebrew Free Loan and how it really helped he and his wife Doris get back on track in their lives after a devastating fire in Berkeley, California. I want to repeat that verse from Exodus 22. If you lend money to any of my people with you who is poor, you shall not be like a money lender to him, and you shall not exact interest from him. And that if, again, is when you lend money. And the sense of community, the sense of taking care, as George, as you said, am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am my brother's keeper. We should be looking out for each other in a small and a large sense. And I appreciate your passion for the group that you're involved with now, that you did receive benefits from. Any closing thoughts and comments before we close out our section today?
No, Arnold. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. I mean, today my art business is flourishing. As you know, we represent some very fine artists, the estates of Jack Levine and Ruth Gico. We have represented Helen Bergruen in the past, Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I'm curating a show of Lawrence Ferlinghetti's work at Elizabethtown College in central Pennsylvania in October, a Church of the Brethren college, frankly. I've done works, the art of baseball for many years, but I would not be able to be doing this if there was not an organization, honestly, like Hebrew Free Loan at a time when we really were at our wits' end and thought, well, where did this come from? You never think that this is going to happen to you, and it does. And fortunately, there are people and there are organizations that do believe in community and helping each other to get started. And in my case, is really to rebuild the business, which has permitted me to now, the fire was in 1991. Here it's 2018, and we have a very flourishing business that helps me interact with people like Arnold Stricker. Thank you very much for calling me. And people across the country, whereas our business was at ground zero in 1991.
Well, Ellie, it's great knowing George. I've had an opportunity to not only talk to him on the phone many times, but talk to him in person with his wife, Doris. They're great folks. And George, really appreciate you coming on today and talking about Hebrew Free Loan, talking about your story. Please give my best to Doris and keep the faith.
Yeah, and Helen Bergruen. We've had her on our air,
Helen
too.
on the radio show.
She was
also
actually right here in our studio. We loved her. So
we love Helen and her commitment to the whole creative process. I know she has a warm spot in her heart for opera, and I think stay tuned because Helen is thinking about the impact of opera on her next body of work. So that's a heads up.
There we are.
You might hearing about next time Helen comes on your show. I should mention one other thing in passing, Arnold. One of the things that I am doing since I came on the board, and it's a very new concept of seeing art as an asset, using my expertise as a dealer on the Hebrew Free Loan Board to help people liquidate contributions they've made to the nonprofit. It's a brand new concept, and it's in the very, very nascent stages, but it is something that we're exploring right now with the Hebrew Free Loan Board.
Very, very interesting. That keep us apprised of that. I'll keep in touch with you about that. George Krevsky, excuse me. I've been having trouble talking today, George. I apologize for that. But George Krevsky, and again, give my best to Doris. And we're grateful that you came on today, George. You take care.
Thank you very much for including me, Arnold. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, George. This has been so informational and inspirational. Thank you.
Goodbye, George. Thanks. Wow, Ellie.
I'm just overwhelmed.
That group is crazy, unbelievable.
That is. And again, I go back to that 99 point whatever was percentage.
7.5.
Right. That's like almost everybody.
That's almost yeah. And $10 million in outstanding loans. About a little over 1,000 people have loans.
Right. And what's interesting is it shows gratitude. When you really stop and think about it, when you repay a loan, and people don't have to come back to try to make you pay the loan. That is a level of gratitude that extenuates itself. Like they said, the people then come back. They become donors. Mm-hmm. They didn't get on the board.
Right.
They pay it forward. that in itself is just such an interesting concept, and hopefully one that we'll be able to continue to promote within our community.
Well, and what does break people's backs, and they have a very interesting video on their website. But they talk about the term for, and I may not be doing this correctly, but the term for interest and a snake are very similar in the Hebrew language, because they take a bite out of you and then the venom spreads. And a snake biting you with venom will debilitate you. Interest on a loan will debilitate you if you don't stay on top of that.
Right. And when you look at, and again, it's not always just the loan itself, it's the interest.
Right.
And that's one of the things when we look at predatory lending, payday loan places.
Right.
Stores that people have to go to in order to cash their paychecks, and in order to do that, they have to buy a certain amount of whatever in order to get their paycheck cashed. I mean, those are the kind of places, like you said, they take a bite out of your humanity, and then the venom spreads. And so it's very, very good to see that this Hebrew free loan, based on biblical principles, is one that's there to help and not to hurt you in any way. No one else is getting rich off of this.
Yeah, help maintain your dignity.
Absolutely. And that was interesting when he said that at first they were embarrassed.
Right.
They were in a situation where they needed help, but they were embarrassed to basically go out and ask people for help. And so again, to be able to provide people with an opportunity to maintain their dignity, to rebuild, of course, you're going to want to turn back and give back.
Well, we're going to keep on top of this and keep our listeners apprised of developments here, and look at this from the St. Louis perspective.
Exactly.
Down the road.
Exactly. Since we now know that Dr. Stephen Cohen is the head of the Hebrew Free Loans locally, you know what we need to do.
We'll be talking to him.
Okay, good.
Hey, and did you know that August the 16th is National Joke Day?
Oh, no. Here we go.
Now, I have to say, because that's next Thursday, so we have to give our listeners some prompts.
Yeah, Arnold's got jokes.
So
every week anyway, but
here we go.
Here we go.
How much room is needed for fungi to grow?
Wow.
As mushroom as possible.
Oh, gosh, as mushroom. Can you believe that? That is so silly, Chris, isn't that?
How do you make a tissue dance? Put a little boogie in it.
Arnold, we should have rated that one.
Little Susie, a 6-year-old, complained, "Mother, I've got a stomachache." "That's because your stomach is empty," the mother replied. "You would feel better if you had something in it." That afternoon, her father came complaining that he had a severe headache all day. Susie perked up. "That's because it's empty," she said. "You'd feel better if you had something in it."
I saw exactly where that one was going.
There's a senior citizen driving on the highway. His wife calls him on his cell phone and in a worried voice says, "Herman, be careful. I just heard on the radio that there's a madman driving the wrong way on Route 280. Herman says, "I know, but there isn't just one. There are hundreds." What happens to a frog's car when it breaks down?
It croaks?
It gets towed away.
Oh, gosh, man, was that lame.
Teacher, if I gave you 2 cats and another 2 cats and another 2, how many would you have? Johnny, 7. Teacher, no, listen carefully. If I gave you 2 cats and another 2 cats and another 2, how many would you have? Johnny, 7. Teacher, let me put it to you differently. If I gave you 2 apples and another 2 apples and another 2, how many would you have? Johnny, 6. Teacher, good. Now, if I gave you 2 cats and another 2 cats and another 2, how many would you have? Johnny, 7. Teacher, Johnny, where in the world do you get 7 from? Johnny, because I've already got a cat.
I got that one. I knew that was coming.
Mr. and Mrs. Brown had 2 sons. One was named Mind Your Own Business, and the other was named Trouble. One day, the 2 boys decided to play hide and seek. Trouble hid while Mind Your Own Business counted to 100. Mind Your Own Business began looking for his brother behind garbage cans and bushes. Then he started looking in and under cars until a policeman approached him and asked, "What are you doing?" "Playing a game," the boy replied. "What is your name?" the officer questioned. "Mind Your Own Business." Furious, the policeman inquired, "Are you looking for trouble?" The boy replied, "Why, yes."
Why not? Yes.
Last one. Why was 6 scared of 7?
Because, I know this one. Because 7, 8, 9.
That's correct, because 7, 8, 9.
That's right, because 7, 8, 9. That one I did know. That was an old one, Arnold.
Okay, so don't forget, folks, National Joke Day, August the 16th.
And then we've got some other things coming up, too. You know, we've got our back-to-school picnic. Our annual back-to-school picnic takes place from 11 to 1 this Saturday, August 11th, at Ivory Crockett Park, which is at Bell and Almenter Avenues right here in North Webster. The food is free. Attendees are encouraged to bring outdoor games and lawn chairs. The Equity and Education team of the Webster Groves School District and the Alliance for Interracial Dignity hope to see all participants from all over the district. Please come over to beautiful North Webster and have a great time. Bring your friends, bring your family. Worst of all, bring your enemy.
I've got one last one here. This is for those people who really like to work out.
Okay, not me.
Instead of the John, I call my toilet the gym. That way it sounds better when I have to say, I go to the gym every morning.
Okay, Arnold.
Oh, so don't forget, when the Martians invade, there's only one race, the human race, and every one of us have different characteristics and is uniquely valuable. This is KWRH LP 92.9 FM. For Intune Studio Manager Christopher Daisy, co-host Allie Wharton, I'm Arnold Stricker. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, walk worthy and let your light shine.